There is one thing you know with absolute certainty, since the day you first understood what it meant. You are going to die. Not maybe, not someday in a vague, distant future. Certainly. And yet, you wake up in the morning, you drink your coffee, you think about your plans, you make arrangements for next week, next month, next year. As if this certainty did not exist, as if it did not really concern you. Why? Why is the human being capable of carrying this knowledge, the heaviest of all, and continuing to live as if nothing were wrong? For thousands of years, philosophers have looked death in the face, not to frighten themselves, not to despair, but to understand, to learn how to live with this truth. Today, we are going to follow 4 thinkers who dared to face it. Plato, the man who saw death as a liberation of the soul. Epicurus, the man who said that death does not concern us. Epictetus, the man who transformed death into a tool of inner freedom. Heidegger, the man who said that death obliges us to live authentically. 4 answers, 4 ways of looking at the same reality. And at the end, one question for you. How do you live with this certainty? Death is the only universal experience, rich or poor, powerful or weak, famous or unknown. No one escapes it, and yet it is the subject we talk about the least. In modern societies, death is often hidden. The dying die in hospitals, far from home, far from family. Bodies are handled by professionals, funerals are quick, and very soon everyone is expected to return to normal life, to go back to work, to carry on, as if death were an anomaly, an unwelcome interruption in the normal course of life. The ancients did almost the opposite. Greek, Roman, and medieval philosophers all spent time thinking about death, not out of morbidity, out of wisdom, because they had understood something essential. The way you think about death determines the way you live. If you flee from it, you live in fear. If you accept it, you live with more clarity. If you understand it, you can perhaps live with more wisdom. That is what these 4 thinkers attempted to do. Let us begin with the oldest, Plato, Athens, 5th century before Christ, the most intellectual city in the ancient world. In its streets, philosophers debated. In its squares, citizens discussed. And in a prison, an old man waited for death. His name was Socrates. He had been condemned to drink hemlock, for asking too many questions, for making the young think too much, for disturbing the city. His disciples were there. They wept, they pleaded, they offered to help him escape. Socrates refused. He remained calm, almost joyful, and he explained to them why he was not afraid. This dialogue, one of the most beautiful in the entire history of philosophy, would be told by his most famous student, Plato. Plato would never forget that scene. The death of Socrates would haunt all of his thinking and drive him to formulate one of the most profound answers to the question of death. For Plato, to understand death, you must first understand what a human being is. And for him, a human being is not only a body, he is also, and above all, a soul. The body belongs to the sensible world, the world we see, we touch, we hear. But this sensible world is unstable. Everything changes, everything disappears, everything grows old. Bodies tire, objects break, opinions shift, passions trouble us. For Plato, this world is not the highest reality. It is only an imperfect reflection, an image, a shadow. He develops this idea in his famous allegory of the cave. Men are chained inside a cave. They see only shadows projected onto a wall. Having never seen anything else, they believe those shadows are reality. But outside, in the light of the sun, there exists a truer reality, more stable, more pure, the world of ideas, the world of truth, the world of what does not change. And the soul, according to Plato, aspires to this world. It seeks truth. It seeks the good. It seeks what lies beyond appearances. But the body often holds it back. It ties the soul to desires, to immediate pleasures, to fears, to the illusions of the senses. The body is not simply evil, but it can become an obstacle, a weight, a source of distraction. It pulls the soul away from what it should contemplate. So you see where Plato is going. Death is not only a biological end. It can be understood as a separation. The moment when the soul detaches from the body. The moment when it leaves the sensible world. The moment when it can return toward a higher reality. Toward the light. Toward truth. Toward what Plato considers true reality. That is why Socrates is not afraid. For him, death is not a catastrophe. It is the fulfillment of a philosophical life. Because Plato says something surprising. All philosophy is a preparation for death. To philosophize is to learn to detach the soul from the body, not to be enslaved by pleasures, not to be dominated by passions, not to confuse appearance with truth, to live more for what is eternal than for what disappears. The person who has philosophized throughout their life has already begun this detachment. They have already learned not to expect everything from the body. They have already learned to turn their soul towards something else. So when death arrives, it is no longer an absolute enemy. It is the passage toward what the soul had always been seeking. This vision is beautiful. It is comforting. It gives meaning to suffering, to old age, to loss. But it rests on one enormous assumption, that the soul exists, that the soul survives, that something in us continues after the death of the body. And it is precisely this assumption that another philosopher will refuse entirely. Epicurus, Athens, 4th century before Christ. At the edge of the city, a man buys a garden, a simple garden, not a palace, not a prestigious school reserved for the elite, a garden. And in this garden he welcomes everyone, the rich and the poor, men and women, slaves and free men, a revolution for his time. His name was Epicurus. History has often misunderstood him. Today we sometimes call a person who loves eating and drinking and enjoying pleasures an Epicurean. But this is almost a misunderstanding, because Epicurus himself lived simply. Bread, water, a few olives, a little cheese on feast days. What interested him was not luxury, not excess, not the constant pursuit of bodily pleasures. What he sought was far deeper, the absence of disturbance, the peace of the soul, what he called ataraxia, a state of quiet serenity, without unnecessary desires, without imaginary anxieties, without fears that destroy life, and the greatest unnecessary fear, according to him, the fear of death. Epicurus formulates his idea in a phrase that has crossed 25 centuries. Death is nothing to us. Here is his reasoning. Death is the total absence of sensation. For Epicurus, all good and all evil pass through sensation. If you suffer, it is because you feel. If you are afraid, it is because you feel. If you are sad, it is because you feel. But in death, there is no more sensation. Therefore, there is no more suffering, no more fear, no more pain, no more lack. Death cannot be bad for you, because when it is there, you are no longer there to experience it. Epicurus sums this up with relentless logic. When we are here, death is not here. When death is here, we are no longer here. The two never meet. You will never experience your own death. You will live up to a certain point. And then there will be no more experience, no more consciousness, no more you to say, I am dead. Death is therefore not a terrifying darkness. It is not a prison. It is not eternal suffering. It is simply absence, like before your birth. Were you unhappy before you were born? No, you didn't exist to be unhappy. For Epicurus, death is similar to that. A return to the absence of sensation, to the absence of disturbance, to the absence of self. And if death is not to be feared, then life changes. Because the fear of death poisons existence. It steals the present. It prevents us from savouring what is here. The conversation with a friend, the simple shared meal, the sun on your face, the silence of an evening, the unexpected laughter, the peace of an ordinary moment. Epicurus tells us, stop wasting your life fearing what you will never feel. What matters is not to live forever. It is to live peacefully, not to accumulate, not to become famous, not to dominate others, but to learn to desire little, to love simply, to savour the present, not to let an imaginary fear destroy a real joy. This thought is liberating, but some have criticized it for being too simple, because even if death itself does not hurt, the road toward it can be painful. Illness, aging, the loss of loved ones, the weakness of the body, the fear of suffering before dying. Epicurus would answer that these sufferings still belong to life and must be treated as such. But another philosopher will go further in the art of facing what does not depend on us. Epictetus. Rome, 1st century after Christ. A man lives in chains. Literally, he is a slave, the property of a master, without political freedom, without rights, without power over his own body. An ancient tradition says that his master once twisted his leg until it broke. The man does not cry out. He says calmly, "You are going to break it." The master continues. The leg breaks. The man simply replies, "I told you that you were going to break it." This man is Epictetus. He will walk with a limp for the rest of his life. But he will become one of the most influential philosophers of antiquity. Because in his condition as a slave, he discovers a truth that many free men had not understood. True freedom is not only in the body, it is in the mind. A master can chain your body. He can take away your possessions. He can insult you. He can even strike you. But he cannot decide for you how you judge things internally. He cannot control how you interpret what happens to you. He cannot force you to hate, to despair, to lose your dignity. Epictetus divides the world into two categories: what depends on us, and what does not depend on us. What depends on us? Our judgments, our desires, our refusals, our choices, our reactions, our way of responding to events. What does not depend on us? Our body, our reputation, our possessions, the actions of others, illness, chance, and of course death. Death does not depend on us. It will come. We do not know when. We do not know how. We cannot prevent it. So, according to Epictetus, tormenting yourself about it is a mistake. Not because death is pleasant, not because it is insignificant to those who remain, but because it escapes our power. And devoting all your energy to what does not depend on you is becoming a slave to fear, a slave to the future, a slave to the imagination, a slave to what might happen. Instead of devoting that energy to what truly depends on us, our way of living, our way of loving, our way of acting, our way of remaining dignified in the face of what happens. But Epictetus does not simply say, "Do not think about it." He says almost the opposite. You must think about death, but think about it well. The Stoics practiced what later became known as memento mori, remembering that you will die. Every day they reminded themselves of their mortality, not to become sad, not to despise life, but to put things in their proper place. because thinking about death makes many illusions collapse. This argument that has been obsessing you for 3 days. Is it really so important? This fear of what others think. Does it deserve so many sacrifices? This desire to impress people you do not even like. Is it worth your time? This anger, this jealousy, this resentment, this constant race for recognition, what do they amount to in the face of the certainty of death? Before death, false urgencies crumble, and true priorities appear. Epictetus invites us to live each day as if we might be called away at any moment. Not in panic, but in presence, in gratitude, in responsibility. He also says something very hard. Never say of something, "I have lost it." Say instead, "I have given it back." Your child, your friend, your home, your body, your life itself. Nothing truly belongs to you forever. Everything is entrusted to you for a time, then taken back. This thought can seem cold, almost cruel. But Epictetus is not trying to eliminate love. He is trying to eliminate the illusion of possession. To love someone is not to believe they belong to you forever. It is to know that they are mortal, that you are mortal, and that precisely because of this, every moment with them is precious. Stoicism is therefore not a philosophy of indifference. It is a philosophy of lucidity. It is not about feeling nothing. It is about not being destroyed by what you cannot control, about not placing your inner peace in the hands of chance, about remaining free, even when life takes away what you love. Plato saw death as a liberation of the soul. Epicurus saw it as an absence that should not frighten us. Epictetus sees it as a reminder, a mirror, an exercise, an inner discipline. But in the 20th century, another philosopher will transform the question entirely. He will not ask, what happens after death? Nor even, should we fear death? He will ask, what does death reveal about our way of existing? His name, Martin Heidegger. Germany, 20th century. In the mountains of the Black Forest, a philosopher often lives in a cabin. Simple, isolated, far from big cities, far from noise. He walks in the forests. He thinks, he writes, difficult texts, dense, sometimes obscure, but containing one of the most profound reflections ever written on death. His name, Martin Heidegger. In 1927, he publishes his major work, Being and Time, a book that will transform 20th century philosophy. And at the heart of this book there is one immense question. What does it mean to exist? Not simply to be alive, not simply to breathe, not simply to function, but to exist, to be there, in this world, with others, for a limited time. Heidegger starts from an observation that almost all of us avoid. The human being knows it will die. Not only as abstract information, he can understand it, he can anticipate it, he can be shattered by this certainty. An animal can sense danger, it can flee, it can suffer. But the human being knows he is mortal. He knows that his entire life is limited. And this knowledge changes everything. Heidegger calls the human being a being toward death. The expression is strange, but it is powerful. It does not simply mean that we will die one day. It means that death structures our entire existence. Death is not only the last event of life. It accompanies every instant silently. Since our birth, we have been moving toward it. Every day that passes is a day that will not return. Every choice closes other possibilities. Every year narrows the horizon. We are not infinite beings. We are beings of time. And because our time is limited, every choice matters. For Heidegger, most people avoid this truth. They live in what he calls inauthentic existence. They follow the flow. They do what everyone does. They think what everyone thinks. They desire what they are taught to desire. They work like everyone else. They consume like everyone else. They speak like everyone else. They push away the real questions. They say, later, one day, when I have time, when the moment is right. But that right moment almost never comes. Because in authentic existence is a flight into noise, into busyness, into distraction, into the opinion of others, into that anonymous voice Heidegger calls the they. They say you must succeed. They say you must please. They say you must build a career. They say you must appear happy. They say you must be like everyone else. But when death truly appears in consciousness, this they collapses. Because no one can die in your place. You can share your joy. You can share your sorrow. You can share your daily life. But your death is irreducibly yours. No one can live it for you. No one can take your place before this limit. And this solitude in the face of death reveals something essential. Your life belongs to you. Your existence belongs to you. Your choices belong to you. You are responsible for what you do with your time. And it is here that Heidegger's thinking becomes powerful. Looking death in the face does not serve to despair. It serves to wake up, to step out of the lie, to understand that you do not have infinite time ahead of you. The call you have been putting off for months, the project you always postpone, the job you hate but keep doing without ever asking yourself why, the person you love but say nothing to, the relationship you maintain out of fear of being alone, the life you accept simply because it is comfortable. Death comes to ask a brutal question. Is this truly your life? Did you choose it? Or are you playing a role written by others? For Heidegger, death is what can tear us away from conformity. It forces us to distinguish the essential from the secondary. It compels us to ask what truly matters. What do I want to take responsibility for? What do I want to become? What do I do with this time that belongs to me only for a moment? Death is therefore not only an end. It is a light, a hard light, but a light. It illuminates life. It reveals our lies. It unmasks our excuses. It reminds us that existence is not a rough draft. You cannot rehearse your life before living it. You are already living it, right now. For Heidegger, the person who truly accepts their death does not become morbid. They become more authentic. They stop living only for the gaze of others. They stop hiding in the crowd. They begin to assume their existence, to choose, to answer for themselves, to finally become someone. Not only a biological individual, but a conscious existence aware of its finitude, and therefore capable of living truly. We have travelled through 25 centuries of thought, 4 thinkers, 4 ways of looking at death. Plato tells us death can be a liberation. The soul leaves the body and returns to a higher reality. Epicurus tells us death does not concern us. When it is there, we are no longer there. The fear of death is therefore an illusion that steals the present. Epictetus tells us death does not depend on us, so let us stop wasting our energy fearing it. Let us use it as a reminder to live better. Heidegger tells us, death reveals our existence. It tears us away from conformity. It forces us to live authentically. 4 different answers. And yet they all share something. They all refuse flight. They all invite us to look death in the face, not to destroy us, not to make us sad, but to teach us to live. Because perhaps death is not only the enemy of life, perhaps it is also its guardian, the one who reminds us that time is precious, that relationships matter, that the present is real, that small things are not so small, that words left unspoken can become regrets, that projects always postponed may never exist, that your life will not wait for you forever. Perhaps the real problem is not that we are going to die. Perhaps the real problem is that we live as if we were never going to die. We postpone what matters to tomorrow. We believe we have time, always more time. Time to forgive, time to love, time to change, time to start, time to become ourselves. But none of the philosophers we have met today would have accepted this illusion. Plato would have asked us to turn our soul toward what does not die. Epicurus would have asked us not to let fear ruin the present. Epictetus would have asked us to distinguish what depends on us from what does not. Heidegger would have asked us whether this life is truly ours. So perhaps it is not despite death that life has value. Perhaps it is because of it. Because it limits time. Because it makes every encounter fragile. Because it gives weight to our choices. Because it transforms an ordinary day into a unique possibility. You are going to die. So am I. So is everyone you love. This truth can be frightening, but it can also wake you up. It can help you love better, choose better, forgive faster, waste less time on what does not matter, live with more presence. So now the question is for you. How do you live with this certainty? Do you flee from it? Does it liberate you? Does it frighten you? Or does it help you choose what truly matters? Tell me in the comments. I read every answer. And if this video touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. See you soon.